In a luxury suite somewhere in Europe, a self-proclaimed billionaire heir is scrolling through messages and wire transfer. Only moments earlier, he had scammed a new victim with promises of a life she's never seen.
He scammed them out of hundreds of thousands of dollars.
A life that includes private jets, five-star hotels, and billions of dollars. Across continents, more women await his text. Some trust him blindly. Others are already head over heels, planning their grand wedding at a luxury island.
Now they're suing the so-called con man who legally changed his name to theirs.
Yet all are unknowingly queued for the same fate, because behind designer suits and private jets is a ruthless predator who is operating with lies to test just how far his victims can be pushed. This is not a Hollywood thriller plot. This is the story of Shimon Hayut, alias Simon Leviev, the ugly man who turned love into a currency and stole $10 million from dozens of lovestruck women. On September 27, 1990, Shimon Hayut, alias Simon Leviev, was raised in Bnei Brak, a densely populated, ultra-Orthodox neighborhood near Tel Aviv. Hayut grew up in a strict religious environment, headed by his father, a respected rabbi, but unlike his father, the son was anything but God-fearing. While most kids in his community followed the disciplined prayer routine, Hayut was drawn to a flashier world beyond spirituality. The world of luxury mansions, Lamborghinis, private jets, and beautiful women. To fulfill his ambitions, Hayut knew he had to rebel against established norms, and that defiance turned him into a cunning con artist who'd make his first move at 15. So, what was the scam exactly? At just 15, Shimon Hayut convinced two family friends, Avi and Javi Coban, to let him stay in their Brooklyn, New York apartment for 6 months because he was having trouble back home. The Cobans were kind enough to oblige, but 3 years later, he'd stab Avi in the back by stealing his credit card information and spending his money on a first-class trip ticket between New York and Tel Aviv, luxury hotel suites, and a rented Rolls-Royce. Around the same time, he allegedly pulled off his first Tinder swindler-style scam. One of Hayut's first victims, Courtney Simmons Miller, who met him while working in Cyprus, said he claimed to be a secret millionaire waiting for his inheritance and convinced her to become his assistant. He then gave Courtney stolen credit card details to use, which got her arrested and imprisoned for 2 years, all while Hayut was scamming more people after returning to Israel. In 2010, Shimon stole checks from a couple he babysat for in Tel Aviv, and he was now on the police's radar. But before the law enforcement agencies could catch him, he fled to Europe using a fake identity. Once in Europe, Shimon adopted multiple alias and began using Tinder to meet women, defrauding them of hundreds of thousands of dollars. In 2015, Shimon was eventually arrested and sentenced to 3 years in prison, and 2 years into his sentence, he was extradited to Israel to finally face the old check fraud charges. But even a stint behind bars couldn't change it. If anything, it gave him time to refine his methods so he wouldn't get caught again. So, what changes did he make to his modus operandi? After serving time in jail, Shimon rebranded himself as Simon Leviev, borrowing the last name of real-life diamond mogul Lev Leviev to pose as his billionaire son. What came next would send shockwaves through the entire Tinder dating scene. Once Leviev reinvented himself abroad, he focused all of his energy on scamming women through dating apps, thus earning the Tinder swindler moniker. On Tinder, Hayut catfished himself as Simon Leviev, claiming to be the wealthy son of Israeli diamond tycoon Lev Leviev. To make his lifestyle match that of a billionaire heir, Hayut wore designer suits, drove luxury cars, and shared Instagram posts flaunting private jets and five-star hotels. To the untrained eye, he looked every bit the perfect millionaire bachelor. But while his glittering predatory lifestyle did most of the work, his hypnotic charm was the icing on the cake as he'd take his victims on private jet flights for weekend getaways, candlelit dinners at top restaurants, and nights in 5-star hotels. He even had personal bodyguards who always guarded Hayut and his love interests on their romantic trips. One of his victims, Pernilla Shoham, was taken along on extravagant trips to places like Mykonos and Rome, all while Leviev mingled with his other Tinder date. While he was jet-setting around the world with Shoham, another victim, Cecilia Filalhoy, was scouring London for flats they were supposedly going to rent together. Once the women were emotionally hooked, he staged a crisis in the shape of frozen accounts, sudden legal trouble, or threats from enemies, and asked for quick money transfers or temporary credit lines to fix the problem. For instance, just 3 months into their relationship, Fialoy received alarming photos of Leviev and his bodyguard covered in blood, accompanied by a demand for $25,000. Leviev told Fialoy that his enemies were tracking his credit card payments and he urgently needed the money, which he promised to pay back. Seeing herself as his closest confidant, Fialoy took out credit cards and loans to cover repeated requests until the total piled up to $350,000. Each time, Hayut would promise that repayment would come within a day, yet Fialoy, Shoham, and others who sent him money neither saw their funds nor their supposed love interest ever again. Between 2017 and 2019, Hayut perfected his scam to a level that even seasoned investigators were stunned by. He was operating across multiple countries, including Norway, Finland, and the Netherlands, meeting new victims, repeating the same story, and milking hundreds of thousands of dollars from each of them. According to report, his scams during this period added up to nearly $10 million in total. But as his lies spread across Europe, his victims began connecting the dots, and soon his house of lies would come crashing down. But how exactly was he caught? While Leviev was busy swindling women across Europe, he had no idea that the Norwegian newspaper Verdens Gains was quietly tracking his every move. After Cecilia Fialhoy, among others, reported his crime, Verdens Gain tracked Simon's movement, interviewed multiple women, and pieced together his modus operandi. Their expose blew the story wide open and turned Leviev from Tinder's most desired millionaire to an international fugitive. Interpol soon issued a red notice, and in 2019, Simon's lavish run finally came to a halt when he was arrested in Greece while trying to flee using yet another fake passport. For many of his victims, it was a moment of vindication because the man who had ruined their lives was finally in custody. Unfortunately, the victory would be short-lived. Before we find out why, if you haven't already, please pound that subscribe button. It's completely free and it'll help prevent scammers from robbing you of your entire life savings. So please do yourself a favor, subscribe or be scammed. After getting arrested, Hayut was extradited to Israel and charged with theft, fraud, and forgery, but not for the Tinder scam. In December 2019, he was sentenced to 15 months in prison, but he served only 5 months before being released early due to COVID. 5 months behind bars for a man who stole over $10 million and ruined dozens of lives sounds almost ridiculous. But that was the genius of Shimon's game. He knew exactly how to play within the grey areas of dating apps and international laws. That's exactly why upon his release, Hayut came back more dangerous than ever before. But who would be the next unlucky soul to fall for his charm? After his release, Shimon used his newfound infamy as a business opportunity. He launched a website offering business advice for a fee, joined Cameo to sell personalized videos, and even tried rejoining Tinder until the app's parent company banned him from all their platforms. He also jumped jumped into the influencer game on Instagram, showing off luxury cars, private jets, and designer clothes to keep up the illusion of being a self-made millionaire living the dream. Even after Netflix's 2022 documentary, The Tinder Swindler, exposed his schemes to millions around the world, Hayut barely batted an eye and shamelessly continued his ventures. He was busy planning a dating show, writing a book, and even launching a podcast on the do's and don'ts of dating. Some insiders even claimed that a movie about his life was being pitched in Hollywood, and Hayut himself wanted to lead it. In September 2025, however, Hayut's grand plans were put on a halt after a German woman filed a complaint and he was arrested in Georgia following an Interpol red notice. He was detained at Batumi International Airport and is currently being held in custody for 3 months while authorities review possible extradition proceedings. Some of his victims were already volunteering to testify against him in court, but will they get justice? And most importantly, their hard-earned money back? We'll have to wait and see. Shimon Hayut, aka Simon Leviev, is just another example of a criminal completely devoid of empathy and emotional intelligence, but he's far from alone in the ruthless world of scam. Another such guy was Amit Bharadwaj, the Indian IT mogul who conned people out of $800 million in one of the biggest crypto scams in history. Click the link on the screen to see how this tech tycoon fooled an entire nation.